Greetings and salutations. Welcome to We Watch a Movie, think about things that happened in it, and then just vomit out our opinions about it to you. My name's Inti, and I'm joined today by Louis Keane and Christopher Watson. This is our first show, guys. How are you feeling?
Feeling good. Feeling all right.
Yeah.
Feeling good.
Feeling good. Yeah. It's been a long time coming.
It has been a long time coming. We want to go through all the Oscar movies, and we're going to start today with Sound of Metal. It's going to be a really quick review.
We can't say Oscar movies. That's just it's got to be award movies. It's not just the Oscars, isn't it?
Okay, all right, you're right. Awards movies. So we're going to do Sound of Metal today. Sound of Metal.
It was directed by Darius Marder.
Oh, Darius. He was in...
It was his first ever film.
Pop Idol?
It's his first ever film. He directed a documentary. I can't remember what it was about, but he's his first ever feature film. He wrote, what's that one with The Place Between the Pines? Is that it?
Oh, with
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. He either co-wrote or wrote that, but it's his first feature directing.
Well, let's just jump straight into the review. Christopher, tell us your thoughts.
So I think this is the first film in maybe forever that I've actually gone in blind, because, you know, in this day and age, you see like 20 trailers, maybe 50 reviews before the film was even out. So going into it blind and knowing nothing about it, I have to say it was incredible. I always love it when a film can draw me into a world that I have no concept of and make me feel for those characters. And so I never think of just being deaf in general. It's just not something that even occurs to me. It's just, I can hear, it's fine. And I don't know why, but being blind or losing a limb somehow takes more prevalence in my mind than losing my sense of hearing. So just seeing what he was going through and how he had to go through denial and then at some point acceptance, I was like, yeah, this is awful. Like losing, losing any sort of audio cues would actually be a pretty terrible, life-altering experience. And I never thought of it that way. So, yeah, kudos to this film.
What would you say about the storyline?
Okay, so in terms of the way the character develops over the movie, I thought it was fantastic. Like, it just felt very, very natural. So when he's going through that whole period of denial, and he's thinking, okay, it's fine, I can get my life back. And then when he slowly moves into the period of acceptance, where it's like, okay, this is now going to be my life moving forward, and how can I adapt to this? The whole thing just played out just so perfectly. I know it's almost cliche to say that, but it was just like, it just felt so natural and streamlined. I didn't feel like the film cut any corners to get us to kind of like a strong resolution. It was just, okay, just watch it naturally play out over the 2 hours, and by the end of the film, you get a feel for how he's now reached his conclusion in terms of where his life is going. So yeah, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, it is really good. And I've thought this a lot about certain Oscar movies. Sometimes there isn't like a traditional storyline. Like sometimes it doesn't follow storyline beats. It's it's just looking at a situation in someone's life, and there's no twists or turns really throughout the whole movie. You're not really gripped by the actual plot of the film, if you know what I mean. I'm more just gripped by the sort of sensation that the film is trying to give me about a man who's losing his hearing. So, Louis, Chris went into this film blind. Did you go into this film deaf, or...?
I didn't. I went into this film ears wide open. I think no, the story really quite well respectfully sort of approached the deaf community in terms of that sort of message of, we are a community, we're okay with it, and it's not something that needs to be fixed. There's a line from, I can't remember, it's the guy who runs the, spoiler alert, the guy that runs this sort of commune that sort of is supporting him, has a line that's sort of like, you know, we don't see it as something that needs to be fixed. And I think that was really nice, and I think that was married well with how the sound design, which did win an Oscar, talking of Oscar seasons, the way the sound was. I always talk about this, and I don't know why, it's from my childhood, as the Mrs. Doubtfire moment, because there's a scene in Mrs. Doubtfire where the food's going wrong, families come in, so Robin Williams decides to order food in instead, and it's sort of like really pretentious food that comes in, like these carrots cost like $400, and it's the scooping sound as he gets like the hummus and the stuff out of the containers onto the plates. The sound department is like that is like so like, and I always thought, it always stayed with me when I was younger. So like in Sound of Metal, when he's like making the smoothie and every single ingredient, you can hear every bit of it. And of course, like when he starts to discover this loss of hearing, the sound is so intricate. So I think that was sort of worked really well with the message of the film, of like that there is a community there that and it's not like it's not necessarily it is a disability in some senses, but it's not necessarily seen as like something that can hold you back. And I loved seeing his discovery of that as he goes through. Do you know what? Something else what I liked, that they didn't feel like there was a big ego in the film. So like he's very much the lead, like he is the lead actor. He's nearly in every scene. Yet it wasn't. He's not necessarily the prime person in every shot. He invested a lot into the film in terms of like he learned how to play the drums. He learned American Sign Language over 7 months, but it didn't feel like there was like an ego from the director, or like it felt quite indie, didn't it, in terms of its style. It wasn't just like every shot was Riz Ahmed walking down the corridor, Riz Ahmed looking sad, Riz Ahmed doing this. It was it was just a film that he was in, as opposed to. I suppose like we talk about award season in terms of like someone going, oh, that's Oscar bait, or that performance was like begging for an Oscar. He deserved his Oscar nomination for best performance, but I didn't feel like he was really pushing for it. And that's what I mean by no ego, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think just generally the story was understandably told from his perspective. We as an audience kind of experiencing his experiences of, oh, I'm losing my hearing, this sounds actually kind of horrible, like just us sitting down as an audience and saying, this actually sounds horrible, this scene, because that's what he's experiencing. So it's definitely told from his point of view, but you're right, it's not like gratuitous, like Michael Bay shooting Megan Fox's asshole in in fucking Transformers. It's done like subtly, and you don't even maybe necessarily notice that you're experiencing the things that the lead character is experiencing. Just so the audience at home know, Chris is a writer, Louis is an actor, and I'm a musician. So we've got all these little parts to focus on. So Louis, you're an actor. What did you think about the acting in the film?
I think Riz Ahmed is so much the focus of the film. You have to think about him first, I think. I think the whole cast were brilliant. I think the whole cast were great. I've got to be honest, when the film started, I was like, oh, like there was a lot happening in his face. That opening sort of like minute, opening 2 minutes, there was a lot going on. And I was just thinking, I was like, oh, he's just being a good actor. Like he's just filling us with lots. And I wasn't sure in that first minute, but after that I let go of that first minute. He just he grew on me as the performance went on, which is interesting. I think he told the whole story with his eyes. His eyes were like very intense throughout. Yeah, very explicit. And yeah, I think his performance was brilliant. I think it was deserving of a nomination. It was interesting, like talking about not being egos, like he went in on this performance as well in terms of preparation. He was very much involved in the film. It's sort of dedicated to it, sort of. I don't know if he was a producer on it, but he was sort of very much involved in sort of 7-8 months before. Yeah. Learning about the deaf community, learning American Sign Language, learning how to play the drums. I think it was good. I think, I've got to be honest, I feel like, I don't know why, I do not know why, but for the first 5 minutes of the film, I was very aware of his American accent, I was very aware of his acting, and then all of a sudden, like a switch, it just changed and it all became very natural. And I don't know what that's about, but I loved his performance. I thought it was great.
Yeah, his performance is incredible. I totally agree. I love his raspy voice. I don't know if that's just his natural voice. I haven't seen him in that much, but he kind of has a kind of a raspy voice. Chris, what did you think of the supporting cast? What did you think of the guy who kind of run the commune? His acting, I thought, was incredible.
Yeah, so in terms of that character in general, I think, and this is probably what separates a good film from a bad film, it would have been so easy to have made that whole period when he's adapting to his deafness cheesy. where it's like, he comes in and he has the empty platitudes and has the little one-liners, which kind of gives him hope. But he doesn't do that. He kind of just tells him, look, this is your life now. And I know you want to go back to what you had before. And, you just want this to end. I mean, he's a musician for crying out loud. Listening is his bread and butter. But it's like, no, you have to accept that this is where you are. This is how you're going to move forward. And I think it was that one line, further on the film, where he talks about how, in this commune, we don't see this as a disability. And what he's doing will potentially affect that community. And he's saying, well, if you want to continue down that path, then you can't be here.
Does anyone remember his name?
No, I've seen
the actor's name is Paul Raci, and he plays a character called Joe.
Joe, we'll call him Joe.
Joe, okay, let's call him Joe.
Joe. He ran the commune. I thought his acting choices were really interesting because I was like, I don't understand if this guy is angry or if he's just, he's just got a tough love type of attitude towards you. But when he fixed his roof, he kind of seemed really angry about that. Like, there's that moment where his roof gets fixed, and it just was a very inconsequential part of the film. But his acting choice was like, I'm kind of mad at you for doing that, and it was just it added layers that a lesser actor wouldn't give.
Yeah, I think I saw that a little bit differently. I saw it more as Riz Ahmed's character is trying to fix the roof, but it's like this whole commune's not about fixing things, about fixing yourself. And the entire time he's been there, he's just been avoiding the elephant in the room. Okay, slight spoiler. He talked to him about, just sitting down and being quiet and writing throughout the film. And throughout the entire film, Riz Ahmed is just moving around and doing things. And then right at the end of the film, he just sits down. He just stops.
Yeah, Louis, what did you think of his performance? Because like I said, if I ever do go deaf, and I probably will go deaf because I'm a musician and I stand near live drums all the time, I probably will go deaf when I'm older. And I'm imagining when I'm brought into that kind of community, sort of people going, like holding my hand and sort of tucking me into bed and helping me. But he played it very differently to how I would expect, and that's what made him really interesting. What did you think about him?
I watched an interview with him the other day, and he was saying that he's sort of, obviously with their research, they spoke to people. Paul Raci, I don't think he's deaf, which I think is a good conversation to have. There was clearly a lot of actors in the film that were actually deaf, but it is questionable to cast people. Do they have that experience? Or there's a conversation to be had there about should they have been deaf actors. But Paul Raci, who's not deaf, as far as I'm aware, was talking about how the deaf community said they were just pleased to see characters that weren't, as Chris was kind of nearly saying there, like when you see people with a disability, there's often like a sob story, or their whole existence is based around their disability. And what he was saying the community was saying it was quite nice to see characters like his, who were just this like recovering alcoholic, and that was his, and he was just a little bit angry at life, and that was his story. Not that his deafness sort of like defined him. And I suppose a little bit like with Riz Ahmed as well, like he's a recovering
heroin addict.
So like I think his performance was great, because Riz Ahmed brings this character to life of this person who's like, no, I'm not doing this, and I really believed that character of like, no, he's not going to do this. And so I think Paul Raci had to play that part, that little scene where he introduced him to this idea of staying on this commune. If you've seen the film, you'll know that. If you're not, he gets introduced to this idea of staying with him without his phone, without contact, and sort of like solitary. With the rest of the people, but sort of without outside world. And I feel like he had to be so convincing in that scene, Paul Raci, to sort of like get him to do it. And I think his performance was perfect in that sense. It was understated. That sort of perfect kind of like. It's interesting that you picked out about him getting angry, because I saw him as this like ultimate calm character who sort of was never.
Yeah, it was totally interesting. It is kind of funny how he is very much saying this isn't something you need to get fixed, but he does very much treat this commune as like a rehabilitation centre almost, like some people are trying to get off drugs, wean them off drugs. Louis, you touched on the sound design. Let's just quickly talk about the music and the sound design. It was actually a collaboration between Abraham Marder and Nicholas Becker. I have no idea what Abraham's ever done in his life, but he's done this. Nicholas Becker did the sound design for Arrival, which I thought that sounded incredible.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
Was it Abraham Marder? You said the name was.
Yeah, Abraham Marder.
So it must be likely a brother of the director then. Yeah.
Or just a crazy coincidence. Who knows?
Just a crazy film coincidence.
Louis, what did you think of it? Because, in my opinion, The Sound of Metal is a great title because not only does it refer to playing metal music, a drummer in the metal music industry, but also what life sounds like when you've got one of those deaf. I don't know what you're meant to call them, but like a deaf contraption on your ear with the magnet that magnetizes to your head, and everything kind of sounds metal and metallic-y. What did you think of the sound design, Louis?
Yeah, I thought it was incredible. I think for this film to work, you had to empathise with the characters, and I think it did a great job of putting you in their shoes. Sort of great job of. I don't really remember there being much. We talk about like diegetic and non-diegetic sound, sort of soundtrack and then in the world sound. I don't remember there being much soundtrack. I just remember there being sounds in the world, because because we get quite into the story quite quickly, and then I think the exploration of him losing his hearing is amazing. Like I talked about the detail of the smoothie making earlier, with all the little bits like coming out. All those little details. Then there's the scene in the chemist where he's trying to get some information, and it's the first time where he's like, I can't really sort of struggling to communicate. Without the sound, that film does not work in it for me at all. You want to empathise with the characters. You want to, especially Riz Ahmed's character.
Were there any moments for you, Chris, that stood out? I mean, one spectacular moment for me, which took my breath away, was. You're hearing what Riz Ahmed is hearing when he's at the dinner table, and it's this kind of deaf sort of little ringtone, and that's it. And they're all having a conversation, but they're just sort of they're doing sign language, and you can't really hear anything. But then the camera jumps to like a further away shot from the table, and we hear what it actually sounds like in life to people who have good hearing. And they're like hitting the table, and they're like being really loud, and just noises that they wouldn't even notice, and it took my breath away. That was just, it was a little bit heartbreaking, but also kind of joyous at the same time. Were there any moments that stood out to you, Chris?
I think it might have actually been the pharmacy scene, because when he's in the pharmacy and I believe the pharmacist is talking about, this guy's in front of me, he can barely hear me, like his hearing might be about 90% gone. That moment was actually quite terrifying, because he's standing there and the person's talking about him right in front of him. Couldn't hear a damn thing. And then I think another moment that got me was when he went to the hospital, the GP, and a woman's calling his name, and he's just sitting there because he can't hear anything, just to come over and grab him and say, I'm talking to you, that you need to come into the room. And I think in those small moments, that's when I started to realise, oh no, actually losing the ability to hear would actually be a huge and terrible ordeal.
Louis, what would you give it out of 10?
I think I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. I feel like maybe that's low.
No?
No, I give it a solid 8 out of 10. I really loved how we sort of went through the struggle with him. I feel like a lot of time in films we hear about how other characters feel about how they're feeling, but it felt really small. It felt really like the cast felt really contained and small. Like we heard a little bit from his girlfriend about how she felt about it. But I loved that we sort of went on that journey with him, and we didn't hear many other people's opinions. We just sort of explored him finding that loss of hearing bit by bit, and we went on that journey with him. I think the sound was incredible, and I know that the amount of films we watch where if you took the sound out it wouldn't work, but this film especially, the sound was so vital to it being great, and that's why it won awards, of course. But it's great. 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10 for Louis. And Chris, what would you give it out of 10?
Gun to my head, I guess I'll say maybe a 9 actually.
What was the one point about it that you hated so much that you don't want to give it a 10?
Not hate, but it's like if I could just critique the film slightly, I feel like the female lead, I've forgotten her name in the film, But the female lead, it felt like it was partially her story as well. And when he was going through his journey in the commune, I know she goes to France at some point. I can't remember exactly what was going on with her story.
Yeah, her dad lives in Paris.
To Paris, okay, yeah. And so when she gets back...
That's in France, right?
Yeah, it's in France, yeah. And when that character comes back into the story and are having that conversation, because we didn't really see any part of her journey, it's hard to kind of figure out how she's got to where she is now. It's not necessarily a failing of the film, it's just that in order for us to understand her a bit more, I'd have liked to have seen more of her journey and how she dealt with the fact that, you know, this person who, as she said, practically saved her life was now taken away from her. Like, how did she adapt to that? But we didn't get any of that story, but, you know, it's fine.
Yeah, there were some moments in there which touch on a past of drug abuse and then owing money. There's a whole bunch of things which I didn't necessarily find that interesting. I was just really interested in the main sort of plot points of he's losing his hearing. The owing the money and the history of drug use, I could have done without that. I'm not going to give it a score out of 10 because, like Chris said, numerical scores are dumb. So I'll just give it an A. Anyway, that was our first episode. Thanks so much for watching. Smash that like button, comment down below, press the little X at the top and close the screen and then go home.